Today is April 14th, 2019, and this is a reading for Mario. So when I look at your hands, they're very interesting hand shape, but actually there's a combination of kind of all four elements in these hands. In the left hand you have the fire and kind of the shoeboxy kind of earth, but the fingers are long, so it has some air. And in the right hand especially, there's some water element. So it's kind of an odd combination of a lot of things. We're going to start with the fingerprints though. So the fingerprints, what I kind of notice is there are a lot of composite fingerprints, and the fingerprints that are composites are kind of an S-shaped. So S-shaped fingerprints, they appear on your right hand, on the thumb, on the Saturn finger, and also the Mercury fingers, and also on the same with the left hand thumb, Saturn, and Mercury fingers. You have a very unusual marking on both Jupiter fingers. So you call it a gamut. And the challenge with the composites is they tend to turn on and off depending on your life, how you're kind of working your life lesson. So, in an instant, it can really kind of shift things, and that's kind of like an extra thing that you have to watch out for, just because, and another thing is the gamut. The gamut is a fingerprint that's really a weird sucker. It's kind of and you have it on both of the Jupiter fingers. And gamuts, left gamut is left Jupiter finger is kind of about blocked passions, and the right Jupiter finger is about powerlessness, helpless, overwhelm. I can't. So in one instant, you could be at one end of the spectrum, and the other, in another instant, you could be at the other extreme of the spectrum. So, in one moment you could be this big booming energy, and then in another instant you could just be, hiding under a rock, just wanting to hide from everyone. In your right Jupiter, you could be, inappropriately big, violating other people's boundaries. And in another instant, you could be ashamed of who you are and hide from everyone. So that's the challenge. The biggest challenge with your fingerprints is they turn on and off. And there's so many of them that it's, I think I've seen someone with 9 composites, but you have 6, I guess you have 8 if you want to include your gamuts. So that's the challenge, is being really aware of when do they turn on and when do they turn off. And it usually has to do with when you're dealing with your life lesson. So, let's talk about kind of the overall theme of your life. I kind of skipped ahead, so because you have very interesting handprints. The theme of your life is service, knowing when to do for others and when not to do for others. Now, what complicates this is that, giving, being of service to the world and to other people is going to be where you feel very fulfilled. You want to help people out. You want to do things and do it in a way where, there's nothing expected in return. Where it's just like part of your happiness is because you get to help others and get to make other people's worlds a better place.
Usually, yeah. I mean, thank you would be nice, but that's about it.
Yeah, and what kind of complicates this is you have kind of down at the bottom of the hand, it's called a burden of expectation. So it's these 2 football things kind of by the lifeline. And it's basically, it's not saying that this is what you're doing, but it says you're wired to do this. So, it's like, it has to do with like living up to other people's standards and expectations, not being yourself, not being able to do what you really want to do because you have to satisfy everyone else's expectations of you. And you can kind of be resentful because of that. It's trying to please everyone else. And you get weighed down by the heaviness of having to kind of give in and live for everyone else instead of living for yourself. Mm-hmm. So that can, combined with the school of service, can mean where you will just, what other people expect of you, what do they want you to do, it can just become a life of where you're sacrificing yourself and putting your entire focus on serving others instead of spending time figuring out what you want to do. Yeah, because there's a lot of ambition here. You have 2 stars of Apollo. Apollo is all about fame, fortune, and the arts. And you do have it is what is it called? It's almost like a fear of rejection line. And so it's like, pleasing people in order to not be rejected. Oh, if I serve them, if I help them, then they can't reject me. If I'm always being helpful and offering my service, how can people, say, turn me away, basically. So this is something very to kind of worry, or to kind of, it's like a red flag is, are you over-sacrificing yourself? Are you, putting everyone ahead of yourself because of this fear that people will reject you, or they have expectations of how you should live your life? Are you kind of trying to live up to those expectations? There's a huge Apollo star, Apollo. It's like an Apollo fate line, kind of in your right hand. And it kind of curves up. It's like a line of clairvoyance, but it curves the opposite direction. So, it's really, kind of has to do with the leadership and family, because it's kind of going towards the Jupiter finger, and it originates in the lifeline. So it's kind of like, creativity, yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of ambition in this hand. You're Apollo dominant. Your Apollo finger is very dominant. So, being seen, expressing yourself, pouring your guts out in your camps of choice. This is also your life purpose. Passionate artist, this is what you came here to be and to do, is to basically pour yourself out on your camps of choice. And be able to stand back and be like, oh, that's me. That really expresses who I am. That expresses my essence of my soul. That's going to be where life feels very delicious and meaningful to you, is when you're expressing yourself. And the challenge is, are you truly expressing who you are? Because it doesn't have to be, painting, artwork. There's one guy that does Model T cars. There's another guy that does sushi. It's like
some other kind of craft or
hobby. As long as you can stand back and say that what you created really expresses the deep part of yourself. Now, part of this is also, the applause, approval, and appreciation. Part of it is kind of ego-ish, where you got to put yourself out there in the world. You have to be seen. This life purpose is not just meant to be you working on your music in the dark and your computer and never sharing it with the world. The other half of this life purpose is, putting yourself out there. And I could see that could be very challenging. You also have girdles of Venus, and that's thin skinness. That's kind of like these girdles right here at the top of the hand. And it's a thin skinness, so it's, most people experience the world, they have 6 to 10 layers, kind of like a protection from which they experience the world. You have more like 3 or 4. So you're going to feel things more intensely. You're going to feel energy. It could be you hear things more sensitively. Sounds bother you more. Certain foods bother you. Certain people might set you off. And, the more girdles you have, the more easier it is to kind of, overreact. Kind of like, one person I knew, she had 6 girdles of Venus. And when her sister would light these scented candles, she didn't like the smell of the scented candles. She would explode and doors would slam.
Some smells Some people are very smell sensitive.
Yeah, so someone with girdles would definitely have more sensitivities than the typical person. That's very common. Another thing I'm noticing, so stars are kind of like explosions of energy, and there's always a penalty with them. So Mars stars has to do with courage. It's kind of like protect and serve. It's like a warrior energy. You think of God of War, protecting, the kingdom, or helping the damsel in distress, the princess who is in trouble, or the slaying the dragons. Could be a super loyalty with people, helping people, having some sort of advocacy, looking out for minorities. I know you did something with writing a piece about a woman or runner.
Yeah, and Catherine Switzer.
And she was not allowed to run because she was a woman.
Yeah, women were not allowed to run in marathons back then.
So, and also part of your advocacy is kind of animals. You're watch out for animals.
Yeah.
Kind of protect and serve, and So that kind of fits the description of the hand. Another thing is you have a there's a lot of positive things with your hand. There's also a lot of challenging things with your hand. You have a dermatoglyphic, and a dermatoglyphic is basically a fingerprint in the palm, kind of towards the bottom part of the moon in this left hand right here. You see how that kind of goes right there? Mm-hmm. So I think of like whenever you have a loop in the moon, the loop would be a lower ranking fingerprint. So it's going to be part of your life lesson, part of what you came here to work on, in order to step up more in your life purpose. You always have to focus on your life lesson, the part of yourself that needs the most help. It's like if you're a swimmer, your weakest stroke would be your life lesson. So, kind of a loop in the deep moon, it means the moon is part of the life lesson. So, learning how to be, this is all about being a spiritual teacher, being an inspirational communicator, someone to kind of give guidance to. And you have to suffer a crisis of meaning. You have to suffer the alienation, the isolation, the stagnation, all the stuff that you don't want to experience. The depression, the kind of the deep down heavy emotions. You kind of have to experience that and grapple with that, because there's a lot of learning, and it's kind of like this this one piece this percussionist told me. He said Brian Ferneyhough writes this really complicated music, and he says, I want the performer to almost have like this feeling on the edge of like, this piece is impossible to play and it's just going to all fall apart. It's like the composer has to have the performer feel that intensity. Otherwise, they're not going to execute the piece as he desires it to be expressed. So they have to kind of come to this edge of uncertainty. And same thing with this life lesson print. And this is an uncommon one, and especially if it's your life lesson. You have to experience those dark emotions, those depressions, the alienation, stagnation, isolation. That's part of what you need to kind of go through, is kind of like part of your, proving grounds, where you're going to gain growth in order to become a spiritual teacher. Because, it's in order to help others, you have to kind of have been lost and have to found yourself and help yourself get out of the depths of the deep emotional darkness. In order to guide others out of it, you have to have done it. So it's because of your experience, having been down there, you can help others when they're going through the crisis of meaning. So composites, like I said, they turn on and off depending on if you are focusing on your life lesson. So if you're starting to notice, with the thumb, right thumb, it has to do with feast or famine, success or failure. So one moment you could be very successful, creating, making results happen. And in another instance, your whole project could be coming apart, people flaking out, nothing's working, stopping short of success, all that stuff. The left-hand thumb has to do with family, so it could be divided loyalties, closeness or distance, focus on self versus other. One moment you feel very close to the family and friends, and another instant you guys are enemies, or the communication has been cut off. And then, right Saturn, integrity issues, tycoon goes to jail. In one instance, you could be a very successful business person, really good with money. In an instant, you're, stealing or ripping someone off or, in order to kind of, breaking agreements, ethical agreements. And then on the left Saturn, the composite is the Billie Holiday. I'm good. No, I'm bad. People love me. People hate me.
She kind of felt that way.
Yeah, that's why it's called the Billie Holiday composite, because it's, it has to do with your internal self-worth. So it can go up, on, it can turn off in an instant based on your life lesson. Or are you grappling with the depths, the darkness? Or are you trying to distract yourself with sugary foods and stuff?
Yeah.
So this is like, do you get distracted or do you grapple with the darkness? There's always, how do you deal with the dark energies? Do you journal? Do you meditate? Do you write music? Do you talk to someone? You need some sort of toolkit.
Usually talk to someone.
That's powerful, yeah, if you have some sort of support or something, because when you're in your life lesson, it's hard to think clearly. You're already in your state. You can't really think very clearly when you're in that state. Okay. Another thing I noticed was kind of the heart line. You notice the heart line, the natural trajectory is supposed to be a Donna heart line. So this one right here. And it kind of takes an unnatural jog right there. So it's almost like it's so this one's supposed to be more of a kind of a water heart line. This one's supposed to be more of a fire heart line.
They kind of marry each other almost.
Yeah, but it's more of like you're kind of turning more analytical rather than emotional.
Yeah.
So one of this one should be fire, this one should be water, and that's drama queen. That's kind of extreme emotions. But when you channel it, the drama queen energy is some of the most charismatic energy there is.
How so?
It's any actress. Anyone with big energy. They're very charismatic. People want to listen to them. People want to watch them. They're entertaining. They're, we're drawn into these charismatic people because, they're very expressive. But on both of these heart lines,
almost.
Yeah, but both of these heart lines, they tend to kind of go into more rationalization. So it's more, it's more you-ish, meaning you're focused on the other person in a relationship, but you're kind of rationalizing it. You're saying, oh, because, I should be, putting this person first. You're rationalizing it. So it's kind of inauthentic, where it should be more in a water heart line. This one should be more fire. So your hands are actually, Apollo dominant, lots of ambition. Your Apollo star is missing the leg of follow through, though. Whenever there's an Apollo star, and this one's a huge one, you think of fame, fortune, and the arts. But if you're missing one part of it, and this is the vertical one, it's a follow through. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's opportunities, but you're not following through.
The left or right hand?
Both. Yeah. but you're kind of missing the leg of follow through. So where are you not completing the whole cycle and carrying out to completion? Where are you kind of sabotaging yourself?
I don't know about sabotaging, but more just difficulty with music, that it's kind of just getting slow with getting somewhere in a place where I'd want it to be.
Okay, so what I kind of noticed with your hands, though, is that there's the overall theme of your hand is you versus others. It's kind of like when things are going really well in the music world, I correct me if I'm wrong, but it's when you're focusing on yourself, when you're putting your needs and focusing on your life purpose. And when things are not going well, it's when you're focused on other people. And you're putting too much energy into the needs and serving, sacrificing yourself in order to live up to expectations that other people expect of you.
I usually tend to think of myself when I'm wanting something done, I would think.
I know there is two codependency lines in here. Codependency lines show up at the bottom of the hands. And it has to do with, being emotionally codependent. It could be, being in partnership with someone who kind of could be, mimicking, I guess, like a family member. So, women that tend to get with men that are overly controlling. It can show up as like a codependency kind of a thing. Or men getting in relationship with someone that kind of mimics their relationship with their mom. And, there's a fear of kind of being by themselves, being independent, being, because Jupiter, which is your life lesson finger, it has to do with asserting your power, having your boundaries, but with the codependency line, that can make you feel very tied, like you have to be with someone. You can't just, focus on yourself. You can't just be alone by yourself. You have to always be with someone else. And it could be an unhealthy relationship too, where you feel like you have to have that other person kind of be there, instead of trusting, that you are capable. Because your hands actually should be more self-centered. These hands are actually lots of ambition to them. You also got the Persephone line. That's another marker of, the story of Persephone. So she got kidnapped into the underworld, and then she was helping the people that didn't know they were dead. She was helping the lost souls. So, you're going to find meaning in helping others. And depression, part of the penalty for not using your Persephone line is depression. So you need to be helping others. You need to be, but in a spiritual teacher way. So how can you be imparting your knowledge? Through your guidance of having gone through these depths of emotions, this crisis of meaning.
Sharing my own experiences and connecting with their own experience or with their feelings and making them better that way.
Yeah, so, just as a kind of, wrap up this hand reading, think of it as there's a lot of potential in this hand. It's definitely
There's good stuff.
Well, so there's good news, bad news. It just as how you channel the energy. We're all given life lessons and life purposes and themes and challenges. It's how do we keep track of those things? How do we not let them be the driver's seat that's unconsciously driving the vehicle, the body? So the more aware we are of them, the more likely they're not to control. We're more likely to be in the driver's seat. So when you start to recognize, I'm starting to feel like hiding under a rock. I feel very small right now. Oh, that must be Jupiter life lesson. That's wired in you 5 months prior to birth. to feel small, wired to feel that like I have no power. Who am I to do anything big? Who am I to think I can do anything great? But you have all this desire to be out there in the world. So you have a lot of challenges to work with to put yourself out there in the world. And, are you just going to hide and avoid, being in the spotlight? To avoid all these things coming up?
Sometimes it takes a few days before I feel confident of doing anything.
So when you have a toolkit that helps you with your life lesson, when your life lesson starts to take over, that's when it can help you so it doesn't paralyze you from staying frozen. Because life lesson stuff is challenging, but it shouldn't be what keeps you frozen, from living your life purpose.
From getting those lessons.
Well, you're already experiencing those lessons. It's non-circumstantial. It's going to happen anywhere, everywhere. It's not limited to one circumstance or another. It's going to happen no matter what. It can be any situation, every situation where you will feel this. And there won't be one incident in your life that won't revolve around service.
What's that?
School of service. The overall theme of your life. Knowing when to do for others and when not to do for others.
When to say no.
Yeah, when to say no, when to say yes. Does it really make you feel good to do it? That's a state of consciousness that you have to tap into, your own compass, and decide, is it good for me? Is it good for them? Do I want to do this?
What am I getting out of it?
Yeah. If it feels good to you, the thing is, the service should be the reward in itself. There shouldn't be anything that you expect in return. And if you don't feel like it's fair, you could always say no. But you're free to say yes or no to requests. One extreme is where you're saying yes to everyone. Then you have no time for yourself. On the other hand, you're, don't want to do anyone for anyone except for myself. And then it's the selfish side. And you're going to find that the best balance is right in the middle. Knowing when to do for others, and the reward is the service in itself. So, there's a bit of a grasping thumb in that one. Right hand. Hanging on to something. Most likely hanging on to someone. Something in the past. Because of the codependency line. So, hanging on to something that, needs to be let go of. But you notice the very tips of the fingers are very developed.
Yeah.
It's all about the ideas. Especially the Jupiter finger. Look how big that one is. We're framers, seeing things from a different angle. So that's very powerful for photographers. See, and you do photography? So yeah, the overall theme of this life, is the self versus other. Are you living for yourself? Are you living for others? This burden of expectations, that can be a very red flag if you're kind of trying to live up to other people's expectations. So, when you're self-focused, focused on yourself, your Apollo stars, fame, fortune, and the arts, your creative expression of yourself is going to take off. When you're focused too much on others, you're going to notice that you're going to be lacking in that, not being able to put yourself out there, and feeling stagnated, down in the dumps with a bunch of bozos. Like nothing, kind of going through a dry period of the music's, nothing's happening, I'm not getting shows. So it's a matter of focus. Self versus other, the codependency line, the fear of rejection. There's a huge ambition in this hand. I'm kind of jealous. And there's a need to help others. You got some healing markers in there too. Persephone and healing stigmata, and also the loop in the moon area. So you're meant to help, you're meant to guide others. But you have to experience that down in the dumps, in the deep emotional parts. That's something that you don't want to avoid. There's a lot of powerful stuff there that can be brought up. Okay, do you have any questions?
No questions. They do look pretty. Little prints.
Yeah, you get the fire, you get the earth, you know, you got all four elements going on here, which is kind of a tricky combination. It's not good or bad, but it's how are you using this energy?
How they kind of combine things
Yeah.
that go against each other.